I used to live in Chicago about 6 years ago, just before I moved back closer to family, and at the time I was working night shift security at a multi-level shopping complex downtown, and it was a massive building, 5 floors above ground, 3 basement levels beneath it, and dozens of corridors that branched off into maintenance areas, stock delivery zones, and a few old disused stairwells that weren't really meant to be accessed anymore. The whole thing was way bigger than most people realized from the outside, and it was easy to get turned around if you didn't know it well. Now, the job itself was chill most nights, and my shift partner during that time was a guy named Ruben, who was a fair bit older than me. He'd been working there longer and knew every corner of the building and was the one who trained me when I started. We worked the midnight to 8 shift, and we'd usually start with a sweep of the top 2 floors, then slowly move down as the night went on. Most of the time, we'd just chat, drink coffee, and log our checkpoints like normal. But one night around 3 a.m., we got a call from the maintenance supervisor saying that one of the fire exit alarms had briefly triggered on the B3 parking level, but hadn't stayed active long enough to set off the full panel. So we had to go down there and do a physical check of the place to make sure everything was fine. We took the elevator down to B2, but when we tried to hit B3, the panel gave us an error. It said the floor was locked. That sometimes happened after maintenance hours. If the elevator had been overridden manually, it wouldn't go down to the lowest level. Ruben said we should just take the service stairs, but the service stairwell he meant was really old. It had this heavy steel door on each level, and it smelled like rust and wet concrete. We go in even though I didn't really want to, and walk down the steps to B3. And when we open the door, the hallway's pitch black, and our torches only cut through 10 feet at a time, so you couldn't really see more than a few steps ahead. We started walking toward the section where the alarm had gone off, a corridor that connected the main parking space to a storage area that hadn't been used in years. It was so weirdly quiet, even your footsteps sound delayed. About halfway down the corridor, Ruben stops and says, "You hear that?" I waited a second and listened carefully, and could make out a sound that was kind of a dragging or sliding sound, like something being moved on the concrete floor. It sounded like it was coming from somewhere behind the row of maintenance doors on the left side of the corridor. We listened for a little longer, but the sound seemed to stop fairly quickly, and we pretty much brushed it off as nothing and kept on walking. The corridor we were in ends at this big double door that leads into the storage wing. It had a keycard panel, but the latch had been stuck open for months, so it just pushed open if you leaned on it. As we stepped through, I got this immediate sense something was wrong. I can't really explain it, but I felt really creeped out. We scanned the area for a bit. Just rows of stacked junk, broken mannequins, old signage, rusted shelves, and huge empty racks. We were about to leave when we both heard a loud bang. Not near us, but back out in the corridor. Like something slammed into the wall. Ruben glanced over at me, and I could tell straight away he was pretty shook up, which made me more nervous. We turned around and walked quickly back toward the service stairwell, and when we got to the stair door, it was shut. But we both knew we hadn't closed it behind us. Ruben tried the handle, but the door was locked. I got out my radio, but there was only static, and neither of our phones had service. I started to feel panic set in, even though I was trying to stay calm, and I was just about to suggest to Ruben that we look for an alternate way out when that dragging sound came back from the other end of the corridor. It was slightly different this time, and sounded more like someone dragging their nails along a dry wall. We backed up slowly, and with our lights pointed toward the sound, and it wasn't long before we saw movement around the corner. Whoever or whatever it was looked like it was trying to stay out of view from our lights. And for some reason, I got this intense feeling of fear that came over me in a wave. I looked at Ruben like we could feel exactly the same thing, and at the same time, we both started sprinting back to the storage area to find a second staircase not far from there. When we got to the second one, the door was rusted and stuck to the frame. It took both of us to shoulder it open, and after a few attempts, we made it into the stairwell and started our way up. The door slammed behind us like someone strong forcefully shutting it with everything they had, but we were so freaked out and wanting to get out of there, we just kept on climbing the stairs as fast as we could until we reached B2, and thankfully the door was unlocked. When we stepped out into the lit corridor, it was like nothing happened. Our radios came back online within seconds. Phone service was back, and everything felt normal again. Although for a while, I did feel pretty weird, like I was jet-lagged, but that could have been the adrenaline dump from what happened. So after we had calmed down a bit, we both went and told the supervisor there was nothing down there, that the alarm must have triggered from a faulty latch. We decided there was no point in saying what happened because honestly the supervisor probably wouldn't have believed it. And Ruben, being the older guy, didn't want to tarnish his reputation there. Now, I wish I could say that was the end of how creepy this was, but it gets worse. Due to unrelated reasons, I left that job months later, but me and Ruben kept in contact over the years after becoming pretty good friends. One day, I got a random message from him saying the mall got sold and a new company had already started renovations. He said they tore out the old service stairwell and filled in half of B3, which piqued my curiosity for obvious reasons. Apparently, when they opened the sealed crawl space behind that old storage wing, they found an old mattress, some empty tins of food, and what appeared to be signs of someone living in there. When I heard that, the hair on my arms stood up and scenarios ran through my head. I asked if he knew anything else or who it was, and he said there wasn't much info, but did say there was deep marks along the dry concrete walls. I asked if he meant tool marks, and he said no. They were large claw marks, like someone big had been sharpening their nails,